what the agenda is going to be for today. So we're going to be covering a couple of things. We're going to be talking about what is the goal of Cultivate Labs. We're going to talk about what is Balay Kreative in general, if you're not familiar with the program. We're going to talk about grant eligibility and our goals for the grants, what you get in the grants if you win. We'll talk about the program tracks for the grant, the application itself, some key dates in the timeline of the grants to keep in mind, and then we'll open it up to question and answer. So to kind of kick it off, why don't we talk about the goal of Cultivate Labs? Let's see, is there anybody else that's kind of logged in? Sorry, it's kind of hard to see when you're on presenter mode. Connor, let us know in the chat where you're calling in from. And let's get to the goal of Cultivate Labs. So the goal of Cultivate Labs is helping SOMA Pilipinas develop. So if you're not familiar with SOMA Pilipinas, it's the Filipino Cultural District that was created in April of 2016. And these are our boundaries. It goes from 2nd to 11th Market to Brannan. And if you're familiar with San Francisco, you'll realize that this is a large swath of South the Market. And it's also a very interesting place in South the Market because it's one, the home of Tech 2.0, all of the major tech companies, Uber, Square, Twitter, Pinterest, you name it, they all have headquarters here. Number two, it's also a place where the city spends billions and hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure spending to take a once industrial area of South the Market and turning it into a much more habitable place for people to live in. And in dovetailing that, the third reason why this is a special place is that this is also the area where most development happens in San Francisco. So this map that we're looking at is actually from the planning department, and anything under the overlay that you see that's kind of like yellow, blue, or green, this is exactly where the city tells developers to buy land and to build up to address our housing crisis. And just as a reminder for Zoom etiquette, if you're not speaking, please mute your microphone so that there is no feedback. And so in addressing the challenges of building SOMA Pilipinas, one of the things that we ask ourselves is, how do we get ourselves on par with Chinatown, Japantown, or even Little Saigon? And the key thing is having a commercial corridor. You know, one of the things that we're missing here in SOMA Pilipinas is a density of Filipino businesses. So when you walked in, you know you've entered or left the cultural district. But the most important thing in developing a commercial corridor is really addressing income inequality. The Bay Area is a very expensive place to live in. And so there's a lot of ways to address that in terms of like finding pathways into like good paying jobs. Obviously, Filipinos have figured out how to get into healthcare. Some of y'all will go into government work. Maybe some will go into tech or become real estate developers. What we're really concentrating our efforts on is entrepreneurship and creative occupations such as artists. So we really want to see our artists become very sustainable and become like economic drivers of our community, which leads us to Balay Kreative. And I'm going to play a short video of Balay Kreative. I actually just realized that I need to turn off my my headset so you can hear the video. And I'm going to play it right now. And I'll play for like 30 seconds or for about 3 minutes. Balay Kreative is our initiative to create a new Filipino arts hub for SOMA Pilipinas. We co-created this project with myself, Gina Rosales, and Kim Arteche. We spent about 6 to 8 months doing really deep community outreach to really understand the needs of our culture bearers here in the community, and came up with a lot of innovative and bold ideas of how to reimagine a cultural center. And to do that, we laid out a master plan of doing a series of pop-ups to test out ideas before actually breaking ground on a new space. Balay Creative Spirit doesn't only exist within these 4 walls, it permeates through all Cultivate Labs projects and different parts of the cultural district. For example, at Kapwa Gardens, we have the Balay Bus, which was designed by artists of Balay Creative, Christian Kabuay and Sammy C. We also have our rotating mural walls where we have Vivian, Chichai, and Christine. The stage at Kappa Gardens is also a test bed for Balay Creative. It allows us to see what kinds of programs will work best for our community in terms of the performing arts.
So what inspires me the most is coming from a matriarch of fly, strong Pinais. I always embody landscapes, Mother Earth as kind of this woman spirit. So a lot of my inspiration not just comes from woman's strength, but I tie that into Mother Earth too. And I consider that as sort of my decolonizing practice as well, just showing the beauty in being brown, the beauty in having big hair. So in my artwork, you'll see that the hair turns into the landscape. They're not necessarily portraits, but landscape paintings themselves.
I'm inspired by a lot of how forms can be held with different mediums. When I look at fabric, there's a certain drape to how certain fabrics flow, right? And how it lands on someone's body. I think I find the same thing in other materials. Wood holds a certain structure, but you can manipulate it differently to hold a different shape. So I think that exploration really excites me.
I'm a 2020 program grant recipient from Balay Creative. Use it to launch the Rooted School. It's an online school for Filipino martial arts and culture. Not only do we teach FMA there, we also teach other cultural practices. Since launching the site, I've also teamed up with Balay Creative to create a program called Many Styles. There I help curate the various systems of Filipino martial arts so folks can learn it in Kappa Gardens.
The future of Balay Creative looks bright. We're going to continue our professional development masterclass series, and we're granting out money to artists. And we'll continue to look for new and innovative strategies to really accelerate the development of our arts and culture scene here in SOMA Pilipinas. Okay, so that's Balay Creative in a nutshell. And actually, the place that I'm streaming from now is actually in Balay Creative Studios, which I'll get into in a moment. So that video really kind of profiled some of our artist residents here at Balay Creative Studios. If some of you win some grants, you'll get space to actually work out of here and help build our community. And so let's talk about the grant. So let's talk about eligibility first and foremost. Number one, you have to be 21 and up for this grant. Number two, these are for Bay Area residents only. So you have to reside within the Bay Area. If you are awarded a grant, we will be checking for verification of residency. So that could be simply a driver's license with an address here in the Bay Area, or it could be a utility bill. And also all the projects that are funded with this grant must be presented or created in SOMA Pilipinas, which gets to our goal of why we do these grants. And first and foremost, we want to spark an artistic renaissance here in SOMA Pilipinas. We really believe it's arts and culture that really sparks the imagination and really draws eyes into this cultural district. And so by granting out money for the artist community, we want to see a new renaissance to really kind of turn the tide of, what the pandemic has done to our cultural district. Like many communities, pandemic has been extremely devastating in the development of SOMA Pilipinas, and we want the arts to come back to SOMA Pilipinas. And another goal of ours is to really develop arts as an economic driver in our district. The more creativity that we have happening in SOMA Pilipinas, the more economic activity will occur here. So, one of the things that is going to become a reoccurring theme, and when we talk about the application, is what kind of economic impact do you anticipate your project to have? And we'll get a little bit deeper into that as we go deeper into this presentation. So let's talk about the grant before we talk about the goals. So the grant is you'll get money, either $3,000 or $6,000. There's only going to be 7 winners in this grant. Number two, you're also going to get enrolled in our masterclass series. So one of the key things in really fulfilling our goal of making the arts as an economic driver is really bringing the hustle mentality to artists and really kind of preparing them for successful project launches. So in this masterclass series, you'll get taught by industry professionals around social media, marketing. There'll also be business coaches. They'll talk about money mindset, because sometimes in the arts community, money is seen as a dirty thing. There's something that you kind of push off to the side, but we really want to change that, where we want artists to think of money as just another tool in your toolbox, another palette of color that you can add to your project to really kind of make it more vibrant. And it's not necessarily something that makes your project dirty or diminishes its value. It's really something that you just have to integrate in your artistic practice. And another thing that we're also going to be providing is one-to-one mentorship with the professional in your program track. You know, being a working artist sometimes is isolating, and also, you know, we have a history in our community where arts occupations are kind of like frowned upon, and so sometimes our parents push us into careers that we didn't necessarily want to get into. And if we had proper mentorship and access to those that are actually making it in our fields, we could actually see that there are opportunities to make an art practice a thriving occupation for many community members. Another cool thing is that you get 3 months of studio space here in Balay Kreative. For those who haven't been to Balay Kreative, it's only been open a few times to the public, but it's centrally located. It's right across the Westfield Mall in San Francisco. We are in the ground floor retail spaces of the 5th and Mission Garage, so we have parking here. If you choose the BART station is just around the corner. And so what you'll find in Balay Kreative, there's about 7 different artists and creatives that are housed here. Everyone has a distinct style and medium that they've kind of focused in on. And we're really developing a really cool community of creatives who kind of get together and make art, you know, and just connect as a community. Another cool thing is that we are partnering with another group called Cast, which is just around the corner, half a block away. They have space on their 2nd floor for artists. So we also have the opportunity to place artists in the Cast building. So that is actually going to become a new pod of Filipino artists, just a short distance from Balay Kreative. And this is really part of like our economic development strategy, is welcoming artists back into SOMA Pilipinas, back into San Francisco. You know, the economics of San Francisco have forced a lot of artists out. We're finding new ways to bring artists back in. Other things you get as a grantee is you get free programming space. So one of the requirements is that you have to present your work in a space in SOMA Pilipinas. And if you choose Coppa Gardens, you get it completely free. You also get to use Balay Kreative. You can utilize the streaming hub. If you're doing content creation, a podcast or some kind of live stream, we'll provide that for free. For grantees, you can also just utilize the space in Balay Kreative studio. So the studio is actually designed to be super flexible and modular. So if you find a program activity that you feel is appropriate to Balay Kreative, you can utilize the studio space for that. And also in our partnership with Cast, if you have like a visual arts project that needs to be presented in a gallery space, you can present it at the Cast building. The studio is not really set up to do like visual arts presentation because we don't have proper lighting, but the Cast building, they do. And another cool avenue for presenting your work is the Black Box Theater at Cast. It's fully decked out with AV and whatnot. You can do immersive theater, projection mapping, all kinds of things there at the Cast building that you can't necessarily do at Balay Kreative. And also, if you choose the Cast building, those spaces will be available to you for free as well. But we're not limiting you to only Cast or Coppa Gardens or Balay Kreative. You can choose any venue in SOMA Pilipinas, be it Bindlestiff, you know, a nightclub that you feel is appropriate, another gallery that is open to you. You can choose those spaces, but we just can't guarantee that you'll get those spaces for free. So let's talk about the different program tracks. So we have 4 program tracks. that we want our grantees to fall under. The first one is the visual arts. So visual arts, what do I mean by that? It is like painting, sculpture, it could be projection mapping. It is something that you can kind of touch and feel and see with your eyes. If you have any questions of if it fits within visual arts, please let us know in the chat, and we'll also have time in this presentation to talk about your possible projects. Number two, music. So this could be like, I'm creating an EP, or I want to create a curated show by flying in this band from LA, and I want to do a production with them. Or it could be an academic exploration on music. Like, let's say you wanted to study the influence of Filipino turntablism on drum and bass music. If there is a connection there, and if you feel that is something that can be presented in the cultural district within the time frame that we ask, that would qualify. Performing arts. So performing arts is like dance, choreography. It could be spoken word. It is like movement based. It is like spoken. It is something that is done on the stage. It can be done outside of the stage. It could be like an immersive performing art project. Sky's the limit. And then we have another project track, which is content creation or workshop. So for example, if you wanted to teach FMA like Greg in the video, that would fall within workshops. Or if you wanted to do a podcast exploring Piña, then that would qualify. If you wanted to do a series of videos that explores Filipino food, that would qualify. But the one caveat is that those videos must be produced in SOMA Pilipinas. If you wanted to do a series of TikToks that were teaching people tinikling, that would qualify as well. And just like the other example, those TikToks would have to be filmed in SOMA Pilipinas. So moving right along, one thing to remember, the application is due on May 23rd, 11:59 p.m. Before we get deep into the application, here are some tips. Don't procrastinate. Don't wait until the day before to apply. We want to see really well thought out applications, and well thought out applications are things that have been worked on, not the night before. So don't procrastinate. Second thing is book one-on-one time with us. We have opportunities for you to book time with us on the 10th, on the 11th, to kind of go over your applications. We can give it a first read and give you some tips on like what we think is missing, what areas that we think need to be refined. We really want you to be prepared to win these grants. So we're going to make ourselves available. So don't procrastinate, come up with your ideas, book some time with us. Number two, ask questions. If for some reason you can't book time with us on the 10th or 11th, you could always email us. Also on our grants page, there will be a form field where you can ask questions, and then we'll post answers to all of those questions at a later date. Also, everyone who's applying should look at our FAQ and all of the questions people ask, because someone may ask a question that you may not have thought of, but it also applies to your project. And then the fourth one is be very thorough. And you have to remember is that we are not inside your brain, and so we can't necessarily understand what your project is. And so we want you to be as thorough as possible. And so I'm going to go through the application with you so I can really kind of show you different areas of where you need to be thorough. Oh, that's my sauna. So you go to Balay Kreative, apply for our grants. And in this page, we have everything, examples of who was granted before in the past. I'm going to jump to, this is where we'll have our frequently asked questions. This is where you can submit a question. And then I'm going to go back to the top. and apply now. So when you hit apply now, you go to a separate page, which is on type form. And this is how we're housing our application process. It should take about 7 minutes to fill it out, but you should probably spend way more than that. So I'm going to hit continue. So I'm Desi. It's going to ask for my last name. This is all pertinent information because we're going to need to know this. We're going to need to know your email address. We're going to want to know your phone number because if we have any follow-up questions, we'll want to reach you. We're going to need to know your home address. So I'm going to put in my home address. Now you know where I live. We're going to need to know how old you are. Not that old, but I'm not that young. We're going to need to know your county of residence. I live in San Francisco. Cool. And annual income. So I know income can be a touchy thing, but this has no reflection on your application, but this is some information we need to track for our funders. They're very curious to know how much money you make. So I make about this much as an executive director. Besides an artist, do you have any other occupations? Yes. What do I do? I'm also a graphic designer. This is information that we like to know because we like to see who's applying to our grants, but it has no reflection on your scoring. How long have you been practicing your art form? Let's say I've been practicing this my whole life. And what kind of training have I gotten? Am I self-taught or have I received formal training? I'm self-taught. Okay. And then is this my first time applying to a grant? Yes. And then it's going to ask, please upload a CV or resume. This is super important. We just want to get to know you. So it's real easy. You get to just drag and drop a file. I'm just going to drag and drop this image and pretend it's my resume. So it's uploading. You got 10 megabytes limit on your resume. Hit OK. But let's say you're like, ooh, you submit your, oh, hold up. That was actually the wrong file. You can actually back up on Typeform and then you can delete this and be like, no, actually, this is my resume. And then I'll upload and you're set. Okay, now this is where it starts to get really important. So the next step is we want to ask for your portfolio. So there's two ways you can send us your portfolio. Number one, or option A, is upload a file. So let's say you have like a sizzle reel. You can upload the file, 10 megabyte. Let's say you have like a PDF deck. You could upload the file. Or let's say you have like a URL. Let's say I already have a website or I have a SoundCloud. You can enter that in. So let's say mine is soundcloud.com/Dr. Fractal. I actually don't have a SoundCloud, but if you did have a SoundCloud profile as a musician and you felt that that was like the best way for us to get to know your work, feel free to drop that in. And now we get into asking questions about the program track. So like we talked about, there are 4 program tracks. And let's say I am going to do something around the visual arts since I'm a graphic designer. So now all of these questions are specific to the visual arts. So what is the name of my visual arts project? Mine is going to be exploring Filipinx design lane. No, iconography. Oh God, can't even spell it right. There you go. So it's really important to choose a project name that really kind of encompasses what your project is about in a really kind of concise way. And then we're going to ask, is this a solo creation or a creative partnership? So sometimes you may be doing a work of art that has a partner. So if there is a creative partner, let's say, yes, there is a partnership because I'm not a really good illustrator. So I'm going to be partnering with my homie, Andre Spider-Dre, because he's a great illustrator and I'm a great researcher. And then it's going to ask, what kind of artwork will this be? So for visual arts, this could be like ceramics, painting, drawing, design. You can choose as many as you want. So I feel like iconography is about design, and also there is going to be a immersive experience installation involved in this. And I also think that, no, that's it. Yep. And will my project be a curated show? No, not in this case. But let me back up. What do I mean by a curated show? A curated show in the visual arts can mean like a group show where I'm selecting certain artists to display Filipino iconography. In this case, it's not, because it's just going to be me and Dre. And then in this area, don't be fooled by this text box. Just because it's one line doesn't mean you answer in one line. I really want you to be as descriptive as possible. So one of the best practices is type this out on like Microsoft Word or whatever word processor you have, really write it out and then copy and paste it in here. In this case, I'm not going to type it out. I'm just going to put placeholders. And then in this one, we want to get to know more about this project. So we want to know, have you done anything similar in the past? So for me, I would say yes. As a graphic designer, I have designed icons for various clients, and Dre, my partner, has also designed icons in the past, and we have and when we were in art school, we spent a lot of time researching Philippine iconography, and so we feel that we're qualified to do this work. So you're going to want to type all of this out in here, and again, please do not put a one-word sentence in here. And then the next thing is we're going to want to see a work sample, because, you know, let's be honest, like sometimes it's really hard to describe your artistic project in words. So this is your opportunity to send us some files. So let's say if it was me, I would send like a mood board of like imagery of what I mean by Filipinx iconography. So I could upload a PDF deck. If there was already a study done, I could send a link. If you're creating an album, we want to kind of hear what it sounds like. You know, if it's not finished, it's totally fine, but give us an indication of what it could sound like. You know, so this is your opportunity to go beyond words and really spend a lot of time, you know, really giving us some project samples of what it could look like. And for this one, I'm just going to put a URL, and I'm just going to put a placeholder. And then the next thing is we want to know about impact, timeline, budget, and financial sustainability. And I'm going to talk about each one. So here is a really important question to ask. Why do you think that this has artistic and or social merit to push our community forward? So it's really important for us to know why you think this project is going to be dope. So for Filipinx iconography, the way I would answer this is that typically in Filipino branding, or when people think of Filipino identity, one icon comes to mind, the Philippine sun. But we believe that Filipino identity goes beyond the Filipino sun. There are other symbols of Filipino identity that need to be uplifted. I could say that perhaps, you know, only showing the Filipino sun pigeonholes our community, because the Filipino sun is based on Catholicism. And, you know, we feel that if we explore our Islamic roots, that there are other symbols of our identity that can be showcased. And the reason why I think that that has social merit is that it involves inclusivity to our Muslim brothers. So that's one way to answer that. Timelines and deliverables. So this is super important. You know, we expect you to start this project in July after taking the master classes, and then we want to see these projects presented and completed between October and all the way until the end of the year. So you would want to put in a project timeline that tells us, what are you going to do in July? What are you going to do in August? What are you going to do in September? And then what are you going to have to do in October to present it? You know, this shows us how prepared you are and your thought process in getting from A to B, because that's going to be one of the things that our judges are going to want to consider is like, can you actually pull this off? And being able to pull it off is like really thinking about what are the steps it takes to get to that end goal. And again, I'm just going to put a placeholder. Second thing is the budget. This also goes back to financial feasibility. Our judges are going to want to know, like, are you really thinking about like, what is your capacity to do this? So for example, in my case, the $3,000, how would I break that down? How much am I going to pay my partner Dre to do the illustrations? If I decided to do a series of posters to kind of highlight the iconography, how much are those posters going to cost? And you're going to want to kind of line item that. It doesn't have to be super detailed, but we want to get an idea of where that $3,000 is going to go. You might actually find that, this is going to cost more than $3,000. It's actually going to cost $4,000. Well, we want to know, how are you going to make up that $1,000 difference? Or if you're applying to another grant, we'd love to know. Or if you feel that you're going to get a sponsor to cover like the printing costs, we'd love to know that too. So outline that into the budget. And again, I'm going to put a placeholder. Do not type this as your budget. And then financial sustainability. So this is super important. Remember, our goals is to make art and creativity an economic driver. And also we want to change the mindset of our community around money and the arts. So in my project of Filipino iconography, I believe one way I can create financial sustainability and economic impact is I'm going to sell limited edition posters. I'm going to create some NFTs around the iconography, and they're going to sell for X amount, and they're going to generate X amount of money. If you can outline how your project can generate revenue, you're golden. If you can't figure out how you can generate revenue from your project, let's talk, book some time with us one-on-one, and we can kind of workshop that out and figure it out. But this is super important. If you can't figure out this part, then you're not going to make it through the grant process. And then lastly, we're going to want to know, are you going to utilize the studio space? Don't say yes if you're not going to utilize it. Space is really limited here in SOMA Pilipinas. And so if you don't actually need to use studio space, if you're a musician that's already got studio space and a recording studio and you don't need it, then tell us. Like say, in my case, you know, Filipino iconography, I could do this from home. I'm really kind of cautious about COVID. I don't want to be around people. I'm going to say no. And then that's it. And then you can always back up to see what you answered, you know, before you submit. And then you can go back down. And if you're ready, hit enter. And there we go. And it will let you know in early June. So let's go back to the presentation, so I know where we've left off. Okay, so let's go over some key deadlines. So the last day to submit questions online is going to be the 25th. On the 30th this month, we're opening up Balay Creative Studios to the public, and we're going to have times at 2 o'clock, from 2 to 3, and from 3 to 4 here at Balay Creative, where you can ask questions about the grants. So we'll be available here in real life to answer your questions. And then on the 1st of May, we're going to post up all of the questions we got from people onto the FAQ, so you can see other questions that might pertain to you or answers to your questions. And then on the 10th and the 12th, you can actually book time with me to ask questions. It'll be a Zoom call for about 30 minutes. And then on the 23rd, applications are due right before midnight. And we'll know through Typeform if you don't make it past the deadline, because everything's time-stamped. Don't procrastinate, please. And then on the 13th, we will notify all applicants by mail. If you've won, if we do have questions about your applications, I will call you or email you, so please respond in a timely manner. If I don't hear from you, from your question, we might have to move on to the next applicant. And then on the 16th, the masterclass series begins. And I want to be very honest that all awardees must go through the masterclass series to get your first check. from the grant. The reason why we make the masterclass mandatory is the last time we did it, we didn't we granted out money first, and then we did the masterclass, and we made masterclass completely like optional to the grantees. And what we've noticed is that the grantees that actually went through the masterclass had the most successful launches or the best prepared. So you got to go to school to get that money, and everyone will be better prepared.